So Dave Lincoln commented on one of our last videos that he would like to see a video on teaching his team how to write a report. And he thinks that'd be a great video topic. So you know what we're going to do today? We're going to talk about writing reports. So let's get started with that. What are the important things? And I'm so glad you're here, by the way. But I want to get right to it. So let's talk about some important aspects of writing a report. You know, it's really relative to the liability of your church. That's an important part, and protecting that liability as I see it. And this stuff is my opinions here. And we're going to be answering the basic questions, you know, the who, what, where, when, how, and why. We're going to basically be working to answer those kind of questions as we talk about writing reports, but also when we're actually writing the reports. You want to paint a picture of what happened that day at church, or what you witnessed, what you saw, or what you were involved in. We also want to note that effective reports or good reports are going to be factual, accurate, clear, concise, complete, and timely. We want to get these things in. You know, we want them to be as factual as you can make them. We want them to be accurate as what you saw. We want them to be as accurate as possible. We would like the verbiage to be clear, because other people are going to read them, and we're going to talk about that. We want them to be clear, concise, to the point, and as much information as you can put into the report. We don't want a 10-page report necessarily if it's a minor incident, but we're looking for a basic, good outline. And those things need to be done, I would say, the day the incident occurred. If it's really a drawn out thing, these things need to be timely. If it's a really big deal and you got to try to do a little investigative work to find out whose people's names are and that kind of stuff that witnessed this, you know, then I can see dragging it out a day or two. And you know, if it happened on Saturday or Sunday, maybe you're not turning it in till Tuesday or Wednesday. But most of the time, we should be able to get these things completed before we go to lunch on Sunday or Saturday, whatever day your church meets. And then here's, you know, who's going to see the report. That's a big thing for you to think about. Most of the reports, people trip and fall or minor incidents occur, suspicious something. Probably the only people that are going to see it is your security team, your church leadership. That's it. Maybe the insurance company for your church. But you might get into, you know, police officers seeing it, prosecutors, district attorneys, those kind of people. This might be a criminal matter. And so other police officers are going to see it in this process. Attorneys really on both sides. You could end up having a defense case here, you know, and a defense attorney trying to deal with his client and what he did at your church. They're going to read your report potentially. Legislatures, you know, if this ends up being a really big deal, your report could be going all the way up the court steps, if you will, and be seen by all kinds of legislative type folks or court type folks, as well as there could be civil litigation over this or something. So we want to write it. You know, I'm not expecting you to put a ton of time into this. I don't want it to be days or weeks, just sketching out an outline, but making sure you've got the good information in there. I think that's what's very important for this process here. So as we look at some of this, you know, your report forms, if you have those, filling out your report forms or filling out a report, writing some sort of report. Now we do have, you can look at for the link in the description, or you can go to churchsecurityanswerman.com, and we have pre-made church incident report forms. So you can go there and you can download a copy of that. We basically put your email address in, we send it to you, and then we keep your email address in the database. Or you can go to the link down here in the description if you're watching on YouTube. But either way, churchsecurityanswerman.com. Get your form. You can start photocopying those and use them for your church. There's no copyrights, none of that. It's just free for you to begin to copy and use and put in your church files. uh, for documenting these important things. So let's talk about, you're just creating an outline. And I'm not going to spend this isn't a whole course in writing a report, but I want to give you a basic idea on how we can kind of form a report and what facts we want to get in there, especially if you're new to this security gig or the church security gig. So in this, what happened? What did you see? That's what we're trying to put into this form, if you will, into this little report. So here's our incident. A lady falls down in front of the church while arriving to church or arriving in the parking lot, whatever the case is. You're just going to document some facts and what happened. And here's the details. And this is what I'd recommend. Basically, lady falls in the church. You're told by the greeters that there's somebody that fell out front. You run out front and you deal with the situation. And then this is your report. This is what I'd recommend as an outline for that report. On 6/4/23 at about 8:30 a.m., I was volunteering in security at whatever church. I was alerted by the greeters at the front door that a lady had fallen out front of the church on the sidewalk. So you're just documenting basically when this happened, where it happened, what it was. So far, you've got that in the first little paragraph and what your position is, why you're there. And then you're getting some of the meat of the situation, some of the details. I responded and found the lady and one of our parking lot volunteers. The female, Daisy Smith, was starting to sit up on the curb from laying on the sidewalk. Daisy said she got dizzy for a moment and lost her balance as she tried to step up on the curb from the parking lot. She said that it was probably because of her new medication. It had kind of been causing her dizziness and sleepless nights. Now, that's important stuff. What are you documenting there? And, I know all the HIPAA stuff, and some of you are going to say, oh, you're talking about, but we're documenting a serious incident here. And we're trying to show that the church wasn't liable. And especially if Daisy comes back later and has a completely different story with her attorney. And this attorney now says she slipped and fell on a broken edge of a cement curb at your church. And so we're documenting this information. So in here, I went out with one of the volunteers, I identified Daisy, and I'm not digging in. I'm not calling her doctor and saying what's wrong with her. I'm not noting what she said. What did Daisy actually say? And that's important. The little things that she utters and says, so important here that we're noting that she lost her balance as she tried to step up the curb. And she said that it was probably because of her new medication and what it had been doing to her already. That is important stuff for you as a safety and security member for the church. And you're protecting the liability of the church. So if she said, I slipped and fell, and it's your fault, you're still going to document that. We're telling the truth. We're not making stuff up here, but when we note that she said that, that is powerful. That gives us the facts of what Daisy's perspective is at this moment and probably what other people's perspective are. It appeared, your report continues, it appeared that Daisy was bleeding from the top of her head. So I asked one of the greeters, Billy, to call 911 and get medical responding. Within just a few minutes, a police officer, the fire department, and an ambulance arrived and began to evaluate Daisy. Daisy was eventually transported to the hospital. So you're showing here that you saw some medical issue, possibly looked like she was bleeding from the top of her head. So you got medical responding. You had somebody else do it, and you're noting here who you had do it. So there was an issue, bam. And you might even note in here that within 2 minutes they arrived, or you called within 1 minute and you began to give her medical assistance. Whatever the incident is and whatever you did, document that stuff. And we want to show that something happened. What were the facts of that happening? In this case, Daisy saying it was her medication was a problem, it seemed like. You want to document what you saw and then what you did to help Daisy, whether it's helping her up, got her in, she appeared to have no injuries, or in this case, she appeared to have injuries, you called medical. Maybe you ask her, I've asked people before, would you like me to call medical? Would you like me to call an ambulance? And so, and get their information. If it doesn't appear they have any injuries, ask them, do you have any major pains or do you want me to call medical? That helps take that liability off your back if later they say, nobody called an ambulance even for me. Now you can go back and say, no, I asked if you wanted one and you said no. So we're documenting stuff. We're not arguing with people. We're just trying to help. We're doing the best that we can as volunteers and people who don't do this stuff very often. And then we're getting medical help or getting this situation handled for this person. And whatever we do, we're documenting that kind of stuff and getting it handled. And then, document in your report Daisy's name and age, if you know it, and other information. Greeters' names, who saw this incident. And it sounded like you had one or two greeters that alerted you. And then you had a parking lot volunteer that was there. So get their name and information down. And, if you can, at least, the police that responded, ambulance company that responded, that kind of stuff. If you can get a police report number, if they have it, or if you can get some people's names on the ambulance or police, but you don't want to interfere with that process. So whatever you can kind of see on name tags, or, if you have a moment, maybe you know them or somebody knows them in your community. So get that information. But mainly you want the church information there. Who saw it? Which greeter saw it? Which parking lot attendant? So that the things that you're saying, you have other witnesses to that fact. And again, we're doing this in case other people need to know the facts, whether it's an attorney or a civil litigation or the church's insurance company, all those kind of things. We're documenting it so that it can be seen later. And, maybe something the leadership needs to see. This is why this happened. And if it's something that the church is not doing correctly, or there's some maintenance that needs to be done, they also need to see it so that they can get that stuff done. Now we have a man who interrupts the church service. So we're getting a little more serious here. So what happened? What did you see? How were you involved? And who else was involved? And what are the liability issues here? They're going to be, did you take action to remove the person? Did anybody get hurt? Why did you ask them to leave? If they were combative, why did you have to fight with them? All of those kind of things. You want to document that stuff. And if you didn't have any issues, you want to make sure and document that later, just in case all of a sudden somebody comes with their attorney in a year from now and says, oh, you guys kind of roughed me up a little bit. You don't want that kind of stuff. So want the facts. We want to actually get the facts and the witnesses and put all this together so we can have it documented and in a file in the church's office. On 6/4/23 at about 10:30 a.m., I was volunteering in security at whatever church. I was alerted by the ushers that a man was yelling in the middle of the message, and he was in the auditorium. I responded to the auditorium with two other security team members, John and Dennis. Upon arrival into the auditorium, I observed a male subject standing in front of the pastor on the stage, yelling into the microphone in the direction of the congregation. There could be more information you put in there. What he looked like, who he was, you didn't recognize him as a member of the church. He seemed to be a stranger. I mean, there's other things you could still put in there. I'm just giving a basic here. And I recommend most of the time that's what we're doing. But if you want to describe other things that you saw that led you to take action, that's great too. He was saying over and over again, you are all going to a fiery place. You're all following the wrong leader. And however, that pans out differently. And in the church service interruptions that I've witnessed or seen video of, they're all a little bit different, but whatever they say and whatever they're trying to do. We got to the stage and I asked the man who was later identified as Dave to come with me outside to talk. John and Dennis took up positions behind him, but none of us touched him. Good information to document. He agreed to come outside with us, and we walked with him and had a conversation with him. Once outside, the police were called, and the man identified as Dave was cited and released for disorderly conduct by the police once they arrived. and here's the police case number. So a great basic, here's this guy that interrupted the service. We asked him to leave and he left. He went with us. We didn't have to put our hands on him or touch him. We walked outside and the police came and cited and released him for disorderly conduct. And if we told him that we wanted him trespassed or didn't want him be allowed to come back anymore, any of that kind of stuff, we could document. There's certainly more details you could put in here. I'm just putting out the basics for you. And I recommend we kind of stick to more of the basics, but get the details in here that you need to. Document in your report that Dave's information, if you happen to overhear it as the police are talking to him and getting his information, or the police give you the information, who on the security team was involved, put their names and phone numbers, home phone numbers, so that somebody could get a hold of them, the pastor's info or any other key witnesses. Obviously, we're not going to document everybody in the auditorium, but I think some key people, if you had a worship leader on the stage and the pastor was on the stage, or by the time you got in there, there was somebody else already standing up there with the guy, write that stuff down there. And certainly the name of the officers that responded as well. That's great information, and if there's a case number, document that. Remember, we're documenting this stuff because we want to let everybody know who witnessed this, who saw this, in case there's any questions a year or two down the road and somebody begins to say something happened differently. No, we want a copy of this. And I recommend that your reports, however you're writing your reports, maybe you're just writing on a lined piece of paper, whatever that is, or you get this report form or you have some already. Get that report done. Maybe you keep a copy for yourself and put it in a file at home. And then make sure that you've got a file that in the church office or in your security office where you maintain these files and keep them so that the church has a documented record in case the leadership needs it, or an insurance company or somebody else comes calling at some point as well. So keep these things. These are important documents. Once you have written them, they are important documents. Outline injuries and actions. I'm not going into other scenarios where maybe we had to tussle with somebody, but it's the same basic thing. And, if someone had potential for injuries, document what they had or they did not have. This is important. If I grabbed somebody's arm and took them to the ground, then talk about why you did that, how you did that, and then what were the results afterwards? Were they complaining? Did you see any signs of injury? Were they complaining of any injuries? Those kind of things need to be in that report. If someone resisted your actions, note why and what you did. Why did you do what you did? They swung at me. I've got an example here just below that. The subject doubled up his fist and swung at us, striking me in the face. So we pulled him to the ground and held him until police arrived. He showed no signs of injuries and didn't complain of any pains or injuries. We want to write that kind of stuff down so that somebody can't come back later and say, when they had no injuries, they want to come back and say, they broke my arm or they threw my shoulder out of joint and I'm suing for all kinds of money. We want to document what happened. And if the facts are that we took him to the ground and he dislocated his shoulder, then write that down. We're being factual, we're being truthful, but we can also put in there why we had to do that. He swung at us, trying to injure us. We felt like there was going to be more issues, more danger of being injured. So we took him to the ground and held him down until police arrived. So just document this stuff, but we're always being factual and always being truthful about this stuff. It's a good summary of what happened from your perspective, and then including the witnesses from the other perspectives. And if you can take pictures, poor Daisy laying out in the parking lot, we don't probably need a picture of that. I mean, you might snap a picture with your cell phone real quick. It's up to you. But the sidewalk where she fell afterwards, maybe that's important. And I'll leave it totally up to you. You can take a picture of Daisy sitting on the sidewalk or laying on the sidewalk, so you show where it's at, and or afterwards take another picture so that you can show there's no issues there. But she already told you why she thinks she fell. Pictures of your subject, if you grab somebody by the arm and pulled them to the ground and they're in a short sleeve shirt, as they're getting arrested or whatever's going on, maybe you can snap a picture once everything's calm. But you can take pictures to show, who was there. You can take pictures to show any signs of injuries or facts related to what story that you are telling for those who might be reading that report. So very important. I'm handling this lightly, and I'm glad that we were asked to do this video, because I think it's a great idea that we had overlooked at this point. But here's what I want to say: don't get too stressed out about it. Write the basics down, look it over, make sure you got the spellings correct, all of those kind of things. Make sure it's understandable to the best of your ability. That's what it's all about. You're a volunteer. Most all of us are going to be volunteers in security at the church. So, but do a good report and getting names and getting things so that you can kind of paint a picture. If somebody was to look back in a couple of years that's trying to find fault or find the facts, that you've spelled it out for them in your brief summary of what happened, or your written report of what happened that day. That is going to be huge for your church if you're factually documenting who was there, what happened, and the rest of the questions that's in your report, and painting that picture of that incident. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you'll like and subscribe. I love having everyone in this community where we can talk, and leave us a comment. And then, hey, take a look at this next video because it's a good one for you to look at to get a little bit more information about church security.